Hello, literature lovers. Today I'm going to discuss Pre-Raphaelite movement. It's a group of English painters, poets, art critics. It was founded in 1848 by William Hunt, John Mellis, Dante Rossetti, William Rossetti, James Collison, Frederick Stevens, and Thomas Woolner, who formed a seven-member brotherhood modeled in a part on the Nazarene movement. The brotherhood was only ever loose association, and the principles were shared by other artists of the time, and including Ford Brown, Arthur Hughes, and Mary Stillman. Later followers of the principles of the brotherhood include Edward Jones, William Morris, and John Waterhouse. The group sought a return to the abandonment detail, intense colors, and complex composition of Quattrocento Italian art. They rejected what they regarded as the mechanistic approach first adopted by Mannerist artists who succeeded Raphael and Michelangelo. So the name was from Raphael. That is why it is called Pre-Raphaelite. So that thing is quite important why it is called Pre-Raphaelite. The Brotherhood believes the classical poses and elegant compositions of Raphael in particular had been a corrupting influence on the academic teaching of art. Hence the name Pre-Raphaelite. In particular, the group objected the influence of Sir Joshua Reynolds, founder of the English Royal Academy of Arts, whom are called Sir Sloshua, to the Pre-Raphaelites according to Michael Rossetti. Sloshy means anything lax or scrimpted in the process of painting, and hence anything or particular of a commonplace or conventional kind. The group associated their work with John Ruskin, an English critic whose influences were driven by religious background. The group continued to accept the concepts of history, painting, and mimesis, imitation of nature as center of purpose of art. The Pre-Raphaelites defined themselves as a reform movement and created a distinct name from their form of art, published a periodical, The Germ. This is very important, the periodical Germ, to promote their ideas. The Raphaelite groups were recorded the group debates were recorded in the Pre-Raphaelite journal. This thing is quite very important. Talking about the beginning, it all started on the Gower Street, London 1848. And the first meeting was between the painters John Dante and William Hunt. They were the three who presented it. So that is the main founder and needed to be considered. They were the founder and who they started it all. Hunt and Myers were students of the Royal Academy of Art and had met in another loose association, the Cyclographic Club, a sketching society. At his own request, Rossetti became a pupil of Ford Molex Brown in 1848. At that date, Rossetti and Hunt shared lodgings in Cleveland Street, central London. Hunt had started painting the Eve of St. Agnes based on the Keats poem of the same name, but it was not completed until 1867. As an aspiring poet, Rossetti wished to develop the links between romantic poetry and art. By autumn, four more members, painters James Collison and Frederick George Stevens, Rossetti's brother, poet and critic William Michael Rossetti, and sculptor Thomas Woolner had joined to form a 7 member strong brotherhood, and Ford Maddox Brown was invited to join, but the senior member artists remained independent but supported the group throughout the PRV period of the Pre-Raphaelitism and contributed to the Germ, that famous magazine. Other young painters and sculptors became close and associates, including Charles Collison and Alexander Munro. The PRB, that is Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, intended to keep the existence of the Brotherhood secret from the members of Royal Academy. Talking about the list of artists, there were painters, critics, sculptors, and educators, designers. All of them were included. It's a huge list, and artist models were also there. It really started from being a small group to a very more. Talking about the collection, there are major collections of the pre-Raphaelite work in United Kingdom museums such as the Art Gallery of Birmingham and the Tate Gallery of in Victoria and Albert Museum. All were there, and in US also it was there in the South Austria Gallery and Dewar Gallery. All were there in the part of it. We are more interested in the work of including they really gained the story of Brotherhood from this controversial first exhibition is being enjoyed by the establishment has been depicted in 2 BBC television series. The first is The Love School, which was broadcasted in 1975, and the second 2009 BBC series serial named Desperate Romantics by Peter Bocker. Although much of later material is derived from Franny Small's factual book, Desperate Romantics, The Private Lives of the Pre-Raphaelite, the series associately departed from established facts in favor of dramatic license and is perfected by the disclaimer. In the mid 19th century, a group of young men challenged the art establishment of the day. The Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood were inspired by a real world around them, yet took imaginative license in their art. This story is based on the lives and loves followers in that inventive spirit. Ken Russell's television series Dante's Inferno 1967 contains brief scenes on some of the leading Pre-Raphaelites, but mainly concentrates on the life of Rossetti, which is played by Oliver Reed, a very famous author related to it. Talking about the early doctrines, the Brotherhood's early doctrines, as defined by Rossetti, were expressed in four declarations. The principles were deliberately non dogmatic, and since the Brotherhood wished to emphasize the personal responsibility of individual artists to determine their own ideas and methods of depiction, influenced by Romanticism, the members thought freedom and responsibility were inseparable. Nevertheless, they particularly fascinated by medieval culture, believing it to possess a spiritual and creative integrity that had been lost in later eras. The emphasis on the medieval culture clashed with principles of realism, which stressed the independent observation of nature. In its early stages, the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood believed its two interests were consistent with one another, but in later years, the movement divided and moved in two directions. The realists were led by Hunt and Malleus, while the medievalists were led by Rossetti and his followers Edward Jones and William Morris. The split was never absolute since both factions believed the art were essentially spiritual in character, opposing their idealism to the materialist realism which is associated with Cobbett and Impressionism. The Pre-Raphaelite period was greatly influenced by nature, and its members used great detail to show the natural world using bright and sharp focus techniques on a white canvas. In attempts to revive the brilliance of color found in contracurrent art, Hunt and Melias developed a technique of painting in thin glazes of pigment over a wet white ground in the hope that the colors would retain jewel like transparency and clarity. Their emphasis on brilliance of color was a reaction to the excessive use of bitumen by earlier British artists such as Raymond's, David Wilkie, and Benjamin Haydon. These are some of the silent features of pre-Raphaelite poetry and should be taken into consideration how it is related to how the revolts took place and all the indulgence and related things related to the realism, how we can separate it from other things. In fact, in 1848, Rossetti and Hunt made a list of immortals, the artistic heroes whom they admired, especially from literature, some of whose work would form subjects of the paintings, notably including Keats and Tennyson. These things really mattered a lot. That's all for today. I hope you must have got an idea about the pre-Raphaelites. Thanks for being part of it. Thank you.